Story 1. Giving my graduation ticket to my stepmom and introducing her as my parent. My 18M, dad, 36M, high school GF, Melanie, 36F, had me when they were 18. My dad asked if they could get a termination as he had dreams of going to college. Melanie was Baptist, so she said no. Dad said okay as it was her decision, decided to drop college and start a family. When I was 6 months old, Melanie said this wasn't the life she wanted, had a breakdown, dumped me on dad and moved. My dad's parents and my dad looked after me, while my dad attended a smaller college in state. Soon, he met Anita, an Indian exchange student, and by the time I was 2, they were married. BTW, dad is white and so is Melanie, so obviously I am too. When they graduated, we moved to our current state, and dad and Anita did PhDs. They're both profs in my state's Ivy College, and I have a brother Peter aged 8. I put stepmom in quotes because ever since I could talk I called Anita mom, and she was always my mom. She loves me, never showed any difference in affection towards me and Peter, and is my best friend. Last year Melanie got in touch as she moved to my state. She had a husband and 2 kids, Peter's age. She kept inviting me around, asking me to do stuff with her and my siblings, and sometimes I'd say yes, but I didn't care about her as she never cared till I was 17, sorry if that sounds rude. She asked if I could call her mom also, I declined, she seemed okay if a little pissed. I did well in school, and got a state award and a full college ride for next year. The ceremony was last week. I got 3 free tickets, anyone else who wanted to come had to pay $25 each. I gave the tickets to Dad, Anita, and Peter. Melanie was offended, and asked why I couldn't give her one and my parents pay for Peter. I said no. So she paid for her, her kids, and husband to come. In my speech I thanked my parents for helping me with schoolwork, and joked that I picked a college far away as they taught in hours. Afterwards, an official asked which were my parents to congratulate them, assuming it was Dad and Melanie. Fair, since I am white. I said no, that Dad and Anita were my parents, so he congratulated them. Melanie started crying after the event, telling me how insulting it was for me to say Anita was my parent, and how it looks awful for me to keep saying that an Indian lady was my mom, even though everyone knows that's not true. Dad whisked us off, but Melanie has been posting on FB about brainwashed children of divorce and elitists looking down on people who didn't go to college. Was I horrible? I know it seems rude to say Anita is my parent and ignore Melanie, but in that context, and all contexts, I wanted Anita to get the credit because she was the college professor and she helped me with school, even more than Dad as she did the humanities, where I struggled. Also, Melanie and my dad were never married. Comment 1. Anita is your mother. She may not have given birth to you, but she has done the rest. Her ethnicity is entirely irrelevant. People can be wonderful parents to kids who don't look like them. There is a whiff of racism in Melanie's comment. Melanie bailed on you as a baby. She has not done the work to raise you. She is not your parent and takes none of the credit for the man you have become. Her social media whining is the icing on top. You do not have to call her mom. OP comment. Yeah, thanks. I mean, the main reason I don't like Melanie is because the first few times we agreed to do stuff with her, she let her kids call Peter Apu, from The Simpsons, and did not scold them for it, which I noticed because I was the one watching the kids. She called it childhood teasing and that they learned it from school. So I stopped saying yes to things and told my parents the reason, so they obviously don't let Peter go out with Melanie and the kids anymore, which means I also don't want to go because Peter gets sad if I go play with other kids without him, which is fair emo since he's only 8 years old. Comment 2. NTA. Your bio mother embarrassed herself. She's practically a stranger to you and that's her own fault. She abandoned you and you should take every opportunity to remind her of that. Your bio mom is also spouting off some ridiculous talking points to rally like-minded, aka racist, people to her corner who will agree that she is the victim and feel sorry for her. Race and ethnicity have no place in this conversation. A woman stepped up for a child in need when her so-called mother walked away. Full stop. Story 2. Telling my wife she has to stay home to watch the kids until she replaces the nanny she fired because I work from home. My wife Danielle, 33, has a job that requires her to go into the office every day. I, 42, work from my home office. We have 2 children, 2/4. We had a nanny, Esme, whom we hired after we moved to this city for my wife's job. We do not have family in this city. Esme was with us since we got here 6 months ago. She was excellent at her job and she was a pleasant person in general. Danielle got it into her head that Esme was going to try and get me away from her. She fired her. It was a ridiculous assertion. I love my wife. But she insisted. She then proceeded to kibosh any nanny that the agencies sent. Even the male one, because she thought it was weird to have a male nanny. She wants me to watch the kids since I'm home anyway. I said that there was no way that was happening. I bring home 65% of our income. I cannot watch the kids and work. I have dealt with this temporarily by inviting my parents to stay with us so they can watch the kids. Danielle hates this. She likes my folks, but she doesn't like having them here 100% of the time. However, neither her mom or dad are able to help. I told her that if she wants my parents to go home, she either has to replace our nanny or she has to stay home to watch the kids. She says that I'm an a-hole for devaluing her work and expecting her to watch the kids because she's the woman. I'm not. I think she created this situation and it's her responsibility to deal with it. Comment 1. NTA, this is a problem of her own making, and Danielle has offered no solution here. She fired Esme over her own insecurities, then disagrees with having your parents over for so long, and then thinks that working from home means you're basically free to look after the kids as well. She is devaluing your work by expecting you to watch the kids whilst WFH. Even if you didn't bring in the majority of the household income, her stance is insulting to you. Comment 2. NTA, OP, you know that the nanny isn't the issue. There isn't productive communication prior to large decisions and you solved it, but she doesn't like this either. The Iranian yogurt is not the issue here. Therapy? A vacation? I don't know, but if you don't start making decisions as a team and she doesn't figure out what's making her so insecure that she can't have a nanny, male or female, then this will only get worse. Did she cheat? Did you? Is there a reason for this? If not, this is probably a pattern of behavior and you need to get to the root of it together. Comment 3. NTA. Your wife must be joking using terms like devaluing when she is the one devaluing you, devaluing a professional nanny who just so happens to be female, and then utterly dismissing a male nanny based upon his sex. She needs to get it together. Does this self-centered thinking affect other aspects of your marriage, as well? She sounds like she lacks any type of self-awareness. Story 3. Laughing at my son's mom when her plan to call the cops backfired on her. I share custody of my 11-year son Jimmy with my ex. My ex recently remarried a few years and I told her that she was making a mistake because her new husband, Tim, and Jimmy would not get along and wait until Jimmy is older to marry him. As expected, Jimmy and Tim are clashing hard, mostly because Tim is trying to be an authoritarian figure and crossing boundaries. I've tried to mediate and made sure Jimmy isn't playing both sides against the middle. He's not. Things got so bad that Jimmy refused to go back to his mom's and I said I wasn't going to force him to go back either. His mom threatened to call the sheriff and I told her to go for it. They showed up and spoke to Jimmy and me. They went back to Jimmy's mom and said they weren't going to force Jimmy to go back to her house. They said take it up with the court. Before she could do that, we got a visit from CPS. I guess the sheriff notified them. After interviewing everyone, they got a court order saying Tim can't live in the same house as Jimmy. I had to talk to my ex and couldn't help but to laugh at her. I told her that she tried playing the system and it backfired. I didn't even have to lift a finger because she did all the work. Jimmy hasn't spent a night at his mom's in 2 months. He just visits her somewhere outside her house on the weekend for a couple of hours. Jimmy is doing just fine living with me. his stepmom, and my other 2 sons. He's not playing me. I've disciplined and grounded him since he started living with me full time. I know my ex and Tim are fighting like cats and dogs, and she called me in a hole for making her choose between her husband and son. Comment 1. NTA, but I'm hugely concerned about why Tim isn't allowed to be in the same house and why the sheriff saw the need to call CPS. Please think about talking to your son and maybe getting him therapy if he says anything even mildly concerning. They don't say stuff like that for nothing. Your ex's new boyo is either hiding something from her, or she's hiding something about him from you and may have put your son in a dangerous position. Comment 2. NTA, and there's a reason that CPS said that Tim cannot live in the same house as your son. Something pretty bad for them to make that call. So whatever it is, your ex is siding with her new husband over her own son. You aren't making her choose. She put herself in this position. You're choosing to put your son first and make sure he's properly cared for, which is what a parent is supposed to do. I want to know what Tim did though. CPS doesn't make a call like that without real reasons to. Comment 3. NTA, I work in family law and see this same thing almost weekly. First, I'm glad your kid is safe and flourishing in your home. My, not legal, advice to you would be to try to stay on as civil terms with your ex as you can. If CPS has already been called, and findings made, you don't want her playing that game with you. No one ever wins. Story 4, bumping into a woman holding a baby in the lazy river. I was at a water park last week and my friends and I went into the lazy river. To my knowledge, I thought you were meant to lay in the tube with your belly facing up and just kinda let the water push you through the course freely. This particular lazy river has certain areas that move much faster than others, so I found it difficult to maintain control and avoid bumping into other tubes as much as I'd like. There was a woman, without any tube, just walking slowly in the lazy river holding a baby. Unfortunately, the course of the water pushed my tube right behind her. I tried to paddle myself away, but the current and other tubes now up behind me prevented me from being able to move myself. I ended up nearly right up behind her, bumping into her a couple times with my tube. She turns to me and shouts right in my face, "You're bumping into me and I'm holding a baby and I wasn't expecting it," so I panicked and apologized and said I can't control it, and started clawing at the concrete to try and stop myself, but I couldn't. I feel like I may be TA for this here, because I argued back rather than finding a solution that actually helped in that moment. I feel like a huge asshole and complete idiot. I keep replaying the events in my head. What should I have done differently? Should I have tried to get out of my tube to stop myself? I also feel like that would have bumped her more as I'm trying to get myself out of a big tube in a crowded part of the lazy river. Comment 1. All I can think is, WTF was she doing there? With a baby? NTA. If it's recent, or you have any question, bring it up to management of the lazy river. Anything that happened was entirely on her. That's just weird, and probably very much against the rules. Comment 2. If you are going to wade the lazy river, then it is up to you to navigate the tubes. The very nature of the tubes is that they basically self-regulate, and that's what lets you relax. It's very easy to just move people gently around as they come across you. A polite greeting and so forth, and it's all good. She doesn't get to stand in the way and challenge anyone to not hit her. That's not what this is. Comment 3. NTA. What in the action park heck did I just read? Why was she allowed to be standing in the lazy river? Why was a baby in the lazy river? Where the heck were the park employees? No, you do not get yourself out of your tube. You're not supposed to be out of the tube in the lazy river. You really don't have control over where you're going. You'll bump. Everyone else is supposed to be in tubes. Barring an accident, which the park should be prepared to respond to. Extra story, announcing my wife's pregnancy when my brother and sister-in-law were still grieving the death of their newborn. My 34M, wife Amanda, 32F, got pregnant recently. We were yet to announce it, but before we could do so we learned about the death of my nephew. My brother's newborn had died, and he informed us about it. We went to his house to offer our condolences, and they were in a really distraught state. Here's the thing, I was buying a few supplies for my wife, related to her pregnancy, when I had gotten the announcement, and as I rushed to my brother's house immediately upon getting the message, we still had the purchases with us. Upon reaching there, we offered our condolences, and remained present for quite a while. It seemed as if my sister-in-law Emily was either pretending to keep her composure or looking for a topic to divert her mind, but she casually asked us what we were doing, considering the purchases, and what we had bought. I hesitated to answer, but she had already noticed some of the stuff in the bag and asked what those were. It was pretty obvious that they were related to the pregnancy, and although we said it's nothing, she seemed curious to know. So we told her that she was pregnant. Emily began to cry when she learned what it was, while my brother began to accuse me of announcing it when they were dealing with the literal death of their child. He got into a huge verbal sparring with me, but I told him that we were about to announce it anyway, and that I hadn't wanted to lie since Emily had already kind of noticed what the stuff were. Edit, as some people are saying I argued with him, I hadn't mentioned it, but he had said there's no need to gloat about it. I sure as hell hope something like that doesn't happen to the child. You'd better pray for it to not die by crib death. And other stuff which resulted in the argument. Comment 1. YTA. Even if you took a taxi, you go home first and drop the things off, or at least put the shopping bags in the closet when you arrive. You do something to acknowledge that entering a home where a newborn just died with pregnancy and baby gear isn't a thoughtful choice. Being there for your brother didn't mean being there as soon as possible. It meant being there as soon as you were able to be supportive. You can't rush to comfort someone without thinking. You have to have the wherewithal to be what they need in that moment. I think you rushing over was less about comforting your brother's family and more about joining them in the grieving process. I don't blame you for that. What happened was shockingly tragic and you ran on autopilot. However, by not taking a moment to stop and make sure you were prioritizing their grief over yours, you made two people who were going through one of the worst nightmares imaginable hurt a little bit more. Even if you couldn't recognize that on the moment, you should be able to recognize that now. You should be horrified by what happened. Go apologize. Comment 2. YTA. Honestly, the issue of no car is irrelevant. You should have left that shit at home first. You and your wife have the emotional intelligence of two raisins to think walking into the house with all that would have been appropriate. Comment 3. YTA. You effectively announced your wife's pregnancy as soon as your newborn nephew died, with not even a second taxi trip's worth of time between the events, because you thought that would be better than dropping the stuff off at home and being a bit later? You have the emotional awareness of a gnat.